And last but definitely by no means least, MEP Luke Ming Flanagan, please.
Thank you very much. Apologies for being late. I managed to follow the earlier speakers thanks to technology, and I'd have to agree with MEP McGuinness that engagement between MEPs and our Oireachtas members is it's essential and it needs to be done. And I've been asking for this for quite a while, and maybe it could be facilitated during Green Week because we get enough time off, and I'm delighted to see that that's the case, and I'd like to see it happen more regularly because there's always something pertinent happening in what we do, and it directly impacts on the citizens of this country and people that you also represent. I work on the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee, a committee that's massively relevant to the constituency that I represent, Midlands North West, and also I'm on the Budget Control Committee. I'm also a sub on the Environment Committee. The Budget Control Committee is a bit of a bean counter committee, but it is probably the most interesting committee when you get into it, because every last cent that's spent of your money, because we're net contributors, we go through it. And in particular, given that the CAP budget and the Agriculture and Rural Affairs budget is so massive, then it's all the more important. And we are now entering into the beginning of a debate as to how this money will be divided up. And I'm a townie. I've never lived on a farm in my life, but bit by bit the penny has dropped why the place I live exists. It exists because we have farmers living outside the town, farmers who paid people like my father down through the years to put in fitted cupboards, paid painters in the town to come out and paint their houses. Their wives and themselves went in and got haircuts. The money was spread around. I know how important this is. We're talking about a development plan at the moment for Ireland and a development plan for rural Ireland. This is integral to it. We're also talking about how border areas are going to struggle because of Brexit. This is also integral to that debate, because if we had listened the last time to Commissioner Keolis and the deal that was done on CAP wasn't warped and twisted by our government at the time, we would now see a situation where people in Leitrim would have got €11 million per year more from CAP. €29 million more per year for Donegal. Less for the Queen and less for Larry Goodman, but hey, we'll get over that. And we are now deciding whether we're going to make that same mistake again, or whether we're going to, in the case of Leitrim, put €3,000 for every man, woman and child over the course of the next CAP deal into their pockets, or whether we put it into the wrong people's hands. Now, people talk about how there's pressure on the budget, and there's particular pressure on the CAP budget. There's one obvious reason, because of Brexit and because they're massive net contributors. There is another reason why there is pressure on the CAP budget, because the penny has dropped among many MEPs out there that it is going to the wrong people. And rather than argue that it should go to the right people, many of these people are now saying we need to cut it. We see people, MEPs who represent urban areas, come in and say this was meant to go to small farmers, it was meant to make rural areas vibrant. It's not doing that, and they're talking about cutting it on that basis. So if it is cut, and we will fight to make sure it isn't cut, we know who to look at. We need to look at the people who have twisted and turned what was meant to be a payment for small farmers to keep people in family farms and left it in the hands of ranchers. So we'll do our best to make sure that it isn't cut. The good news on it is, and I thought I might have had a radical point of view when I went out there, that this money should be redistributed to small farmers. Well, the good news is, even the people in the government's group, in the EPP, agree hook, line and sinker that the money needs to go to the small farmer. A man called Zeller, who was on the Budgetary Control Committee, he is in the same group as Fine Gael. He constantly harps on about it, how this must change. So we might, and in fact I'm fairly definite, we probably will get a good deal for small farmers. And at one of the last meetings I was at, Marion Harkin made the point that, well, we didn't really succeed in the last CAP. Well, I'm afraid Marion wasn't giving herself the credit she deserved, and the MEPs who did get the good deal. The problem was, when it was brought home, it was twisted and it was turned, so it ended up in the wrong hands. We need to make sure that that doesn't happen again if we want rural Ireland to survive. Another thing, massively important, and Matt has mentioned and others have mentioned it, the Mercosur deal. We are apparently going to trade off our suckler farmers and our beef industry so our car industry can thrive. Sorry, but where is our car industry? We don't have one. We are trading off something we have for something we will never have and something we're not going to get. We are now going to expect, if this deal goes through, our farmers to compete where our farmers have to tell you from the moment the sperm is delivered, where it came from, right until you eat the meat on your plate, where exactly it has been. Now, potentially, we're going to have to compete with people who farm on the basis that, sure, if we know where it was for the last 3 months, isn't that all right? Well, obviously, traceability comes with costs, and costs reduce profitability and make it less viable for people to farm where we come from. So we've got to stop this deal. As Matt has said, they need beef on the table for this deal to go through. We need to say no more for this deal. In relation to the white paper on the future of Europe, to be positive, we are now finally having debates. But one would have to worry. When you set up a timetable for something, you should stick to a timetable. When the GAA set up a timetable for the All-Ireland, it takes place when it's meant to take place. It doesn't take place 6 months later, and they don't come along and say, well, we didn't have to bother telling you it wasn't going to take place for 6 months. Because we were told in March of last year by Jean-Claude Juncker that there would be a series of Future of Europe debates around Europe between March and December. And then it would be brought to the Council. Then it would be brought to us to discuss it. He claimed there were thousands of debates. There were not. I looked for them, I searched for them. I was obsessed looking for them because I know my future and my children's future are at stake. Now we're having the debates. Finally we're having the debates, and that is good. But as was already said, we were meant to be debating 5 options. But the man who is meant to be leading is Jean-Claude Juncker. Before we get to debate it, before most people even knew there was a debate ongoing, he had made up his mind already about a 6th option. And within the future of Europe, obviously there are some brilliant things done within Europe. I may be a sceptic in many areas, but when it comes to agriculture, I certainly am not. But when it comes to areas such as full fiscal union, which potentially we could face, and an end to our choice to choose our corporation tax rate, that could be gone. We need a proper debate on that, and we need to look at it. When it comes to defence, we definitely need to look at it, because at the moment we are being railroaded down the road of something that's described by Federica Mogherini not as a European army, but something even more ambitious. We now have socialists standing up in the Parliament saying this should become our most important project. Food security is our most important project, and it's got to stay that way. But we're pushing in the opposite direction. Federica Mogherini, the Commissioner, continuously cites opinion polls that are carried out in Europe to say that we support going further into a European army type system. When you look for the information on it, in the same meeting where she talks about being open and transparent, you cannot find out what the results are for Ireland, even though she has and the Commission have claimed that we're all supportive of it. Maybe we are, maybe we're not. I certainly amn't. I'd like to know what the answer to that question is. We can't find it. I said earlier, I'm sceptical in certain areas. You ask a question of the Agriculture Commission, you get an answer. You ask a question of Federica Mogherini, you don't get an answer. One final thing. We now have a high-level committee on fake news in the European Union. We, as MEPs, have a right to find out how the process is organised and how the appointments take place to these committees. I have a problem, a serious problem, with who was appointed from Ireland. Who that person is, you can find out yourselves. It's publicly available. I have attempted, with the Commissioner and the relevant Commission, to find out how this process took place and to look for an opportunity to express concern who was appointed. We have not even got an answer. That's what I'm at in the European Union, and lots more. Thanks for the opportunity for letting me speak on it.
Thank you all very much. And now we'll go to our members. And I know